He looked me in the eyes and said, "You're just the coder. You don't belong in this meeting." That day, I realized I had built an empire for someone who never planned to share the crown. I can still hear his words echoing in my head like a slap across my face. I don't think I've ever felt so small in my life. Ryan Blake, my co-founder, my best friend, the guy I thought I was building something with, had just stripped me of my worth. In that one moment, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd worked for, it all came crashing down. I thought I had a purpose. I thought we were in this together. But Ryan's words? They revealed something I couldn't ignore anymore. I had built an empire for someone who never had any intention of sharing the throne. Let me take you back a bit, to where it all started. My name's Ethan Qureshi. I'm 29, quiet, but in my own way, brilliant. I'm the kind of guy who finds comfort in code, in building things that don't just work, but have the potential to change things, make lives better. I wasn't the loudest guy in the room, never the one pushing myself to the front, but I was the one quietly making sure everything ran smoothly in the background. I come from a middle-class immigrant family. My parents ran a small grocery store. It was a tough, honest living. My dad would work early mornings and late nights, never asking for a thing, always hoping I'd find something better. And for years, I tried to live up to that, to find something that would make him proud. I wasn't the star athlete or the class president, but I had a knack for problem solving, for seeing patterns where others saw chaos. That's where my love for coding came from. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was just what I was good at. And then came Ryan. Ryan Blake was everything I wasn't. He was charismatic, outgoing, the kind of guy who walked into a room and immediately became the center of attention. We met in college, and we were inseparable. He was always the one talking in class, raising his hand, selling his ideas to everyone. And I? I was content sitting back, letting my work speak for itself. He was the business mind, the visionary, and I was the engine behind his ideas. We talked about starting a business together for years. A logistics optimization app, something that could help supply chains run more efficiently. The idea was simple, but brilliant. Ryan pitched it to me one night over pizza, and I was sold. I'd build the tech, he'd handle the branding, and together we'd change the world. The dream was clear. We were a team. Or so I thought. We launched Naviloop in a small, cluttered two-bedroom apartment in Chicago. To be honest, it wasn't much. We had a couch that looked like it had been pulled from a yard sale, a kitchen table covered in notebooks and empty coffee cups, and a stack of old servers we barely knew how to use. But none of that mattered to me. I was on fire. I was working 16-hour days, coding and debugging, trying to make the app as flawless as possible. I didn't mind the long nights. I didn't mind the cold pizza or the endless cups of coffee. I had a purpose. I was building something of my own, something real. Ryan? Well, Ryan was out there making connections, networking, shaking hands with investors and potential clients. He was charming and persuasive, a natural salesman. He was the face of Naviloop, and I was the one who made sure everything under the hood worked perfectly. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. The team needed me to be the quiet one, the behind-the-scenes guy who could build the software that would carry the business forward. For months, things were good. We'd get small wins, signs that our idea was catching fire. But every win felt a little empty. Ryan would celebrate, thank everyone around him. But he never once thanked me. And I wasn't asking for a shout-out or a trophy. I didn't need the recognition. Or at least, I didn't think I did. But as time went on, something changed. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the fame. It was something deeper. Something I didn't see until it was too late. Ryan started talking about the next steps. He began making decisions without me. Big ones, investor meetings without me, strategic calls without me. And when I confronted him, he just brushed it off. He was the visionary, he said. I was the coder. We needed someone with real vision to take us to the next level. And that was the moment it hit me. I wasn't just the guy who built the code. I was the guy who built everything, from scratch. But he was taking all the credit. The empire I'd helped build was now his, and I wasn't even in the room to defend myself. And that's when I knew I had to leave. But more importantly, I had to do something bigger. It was time to stop being just the coder. This is just the beginning of my story. Stay with me, because you won't believe what happened next. I'd like to tell you that things got better. After that night I walked out, but honestly, they didn't. They got worse. Slowly, quietly. Ryan started making moves that I should have seen coming, but somehow didn't. It started with the meetings. At first, I thought nothing of it. Ryan was always the one pushing for investors, handling the pitches, doing the charm. That was his role. But then the calls started happening without me. Important ones? The ones where decisions were made, about funding, about direction, about our future. At first it was subtle. I'd see Ryan walk out of a meeting with a smug grin, as if he had just closed a massive deal. He'd toss me a, "Hey, I'll catch you later," as if I hadn't just been left out of something that would change the course of our company. And then came the interviews. Ryan started going solo, claiming more and more credit for everything, even things I knew I had built. I caught him on a podcast one afternoon, the host asking him, "So, what's the idea behind Naviloop?" And Ryan, with that usual confidence, started speaking, weaving this whole story about how he came up with the vision, how he saw the future of logistics and decided to build the app. I froze. It felt like a punch to the gut. He didn't just forget me, he erased me. He rewrote the entire history of what we had done together, as if I was just some background figure, some person who wasn't even worthy of being mentioned, and that's when I confronted him. I needed answers. I walked into his office, where he was lounging back, feet on the desk, looking like he owned the world. I told him, "Ryan, what the hell is going on? You've been cutting me out of meetings, taking all the credit for what we've built. You're not even acknowledging my work. This is our startup, not just yours." He didn't even flinch. No apology. No remorse. He just shrugged and said, "You're just the coder, man. Let me handle the rest." Like it was nothing, like I was some tool he could use until he didn't need me anymore. His words stung, and I didn't know what to say back. I had nothing left to say to him, because right then I realized I was nothing to him. Not the friend, not the co-founder, just the coder. The real slap in the face came a few days later. I logged into LinkedIn, thinking it was just another day of boring updates from old colleagues when I saw it. The post from Ryan. He had just announced the closing of a major funding round for Naviloop, a round that I had no idea was even happening. And what made it worse? The post made it sound like Ryan had done it all on his own. There was no mention of me, no thanks for building the app, for getting us to that point. Just him, the visionary, the one who knew where the market was going. I felt sick, betrayed, like I had just been punched in the stomach. Here I was, the person who put in all the hours, who stayed up late, coding, testing, perfecting. And Ryan had just erased me. My existence in this company, in this journey, had been reduced to nothing. I couldn't let this go. That afternoon, I stormed into the office. My mind was spinning. The anger was boiling over. I could feel the heat in my chest as I walked through the door, the sting of betrayal still fresh. Ryan was in the conference room with a bunch of junior hires and a few investors, talking about how this was the future of logistics. I could have made a scene. I could have blasted Ryan on social media, called out his betrayal for the world to see, told the investors how he'd stolen everything from me. But something inside me told me that wasn't the way. That wouldn't fix anything. It would just give him more reasons to dismiss me as a spiteful ex-co-founder, exactly what he wanted. So instead of lashing out, I did what I had always done best. I built. I went into a kind of silent rebuild mode. I started working on a new version of what Ryan and I had created, but this time it was going to be mine. Leaner, smarter, more efficient. It wasn't just an idea anymore, it was a vision that I had for the future. I didn't just want to fix Naviloop. I wanted to make something better, something that would stand on its own, something Ryan wouldn't be able to take credit for this time. I named it PathLink. It wasn't just a new app. It was everything that Naviloop could have been, but with the flaws stripped away. PathLink was going to solve the same problems, but it was more intuitive, more scalable, more adaptable. I knew exactly how to build it, having worked on Naviloop every single day. But this time, I had learned from the mistakes we made, and I knew exactly how to make it more efficient. I spent days, weeks poring over code, rewriting algorithms, perfecting the UI. No more long nights coding on a couch surrounded by empty pizza boxes. I was working in silence, and I was determined to make this version flawless. I had no time to waste. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not even my closest friends. I wasn't ready to be that guy again, the one who had all the ideas but got pushed aside. This time, I was going to do it right. I was going to be the face of this new project, the one who got credit where it was due. But there was one person I knew I had to reach out to, Michelle Lin. She was an investor I had met a year ago. She had turned down Naviloop at the time, saying there was internal imbalance in the company. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but now, looking back, I knew what she meant. Ryan's charisma, his drive for attention, had overshadowed everything. But Michelle had seen something in me. She had looked at me differently than Ryan did. She saw the potential for something more, something bigger. I reached out to her quietly, explaining what I had been working on, telling her I had something better. She remembered me. We set up a time to meet. At the time, I didn't know what to expect. I was terrified, to be honest. What if she didn't see it? What if it was just another product in an already overcrowded space? But I knew I had to try. If I didn't, I would always wonder, what if? The meeting was set, and when I walked into her office, I was different, more confident, more focused. I wasn't the quiet coder anymore. I wasn't the guy in the back seat, watching as someone else took the wheel. I was the founder. Michelle listened intently as I walked her through the features of PathLink, showing her how it could solve the exact same problems that Naviloop had tried to, but with much more finesse. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say much. She just nodded as I laid it all out. The business model, the technology, the scalability. She asked me a few tough questions, of course. She was an investor. She had to. But this time, I was ready. I had answers. I had a plan. And then, after what felt like an eternity, Michelle smiled. "I like this," she said. "I think this has potential. I want to see more. Send me the details, and let's talk funding." 1 week later, I received an email that I'll never forget. The subject line read, "PathLink Seed Funding Approved." I couldn't believe it. Michelle wasn't just offering a small investment. She was offering a massive seed round, triple what Naviloop had raised. She saw the potential in PathLink, and more than that, she saw me, not just the guy who built the code, but the guy who had the vision, the one who had learned from his mistakes and was ready to build something from the ground up, on his own terms. Ryan had always been the one who got the spotlight. But now, with PathLink, I was the one stepping into the light. It was a turning point I had never expected. All the silence, all the frustration, all the pain. It was finally paying off. And I wasn't done yet. PathLink wasn't just the future of logistics. It was my future. And this was only the beginning. It wasn't planned. I didn't wake up that morning thinking today was the day I'd see Ryan again, not after everything that had happened. But life, it seems, has a funny way of bringing things full circle. I was invited to a major VC event, one of those high-profile conferences where the big players come together to showcase their startups, pitch for investments, and rub elbows with the industry's elite. Michelle had set it all up. She wanted PathLink to make a splash, and this was the perfect place to do it. The last thing I expected was to find myself face to face with Ryan. But when I walked into the grand hall, I saw him on stage, talking about Naviloop, selling the same vision he had always sold. The crowd was eating it up, and there he was, standing tall, speaking with the kind of confidence that only comes from having had everything handed to you. I paused at the entrance, my heart racing a little. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I just couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief that I was standing here at the same event, for the same reason, but as a completely different person. I scanned the room, and then, to my surprise, Michelle appeared beside me. She gave me a smile, the kind of smile that said, "This is your moment." As we walked in together, Michelle leaned over and whispered, "You ready for this?" I nodded, trying to keep my composure. And then it happened. The event organizers called my name to take the stage as a featured guest. As the crowd clapped, I could feel every eye on me. It wasn't just the start of my career. This was the start of something bigger, something Ryan had never believed in. I could feel Ryan's gaze before I even saw his face. His eyes locked on mine as I made my way to the front of the room. His expression shifted in an instant, from confidence to something else. It was the first time I'd seen him look truly unsettled. He was frozen. And for a second, I almost felt bad for him. But then I reminded myself of all the months of sleepless nights, the feeling of betrayal, the moments where I thought I might never get back on my feet. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me. As I began to speak, Michelle was at my side, and she made sure to mention something that sent a shockwave through the room. She turned to the crowd, speaking with her characteristic calm and poise, and said, "This is the guy you cut out? You let him walk? We've already moved forward with him. PathLink is the future of logistics." AI, and just like that, the room fell silent. Ryan's face turned pale. He looked like he was choking on his words. I could see the panic in his eyes. His shoulders were stiff, his confident posture now shattered. In front of everyone, Michelle had publicly praised me, and in doing so, made it clear. I had moved on, and the future had already chosen me. I didn't need to say anything else. The message was loud and clear. I wasn't the coder anymore. I wasn't the guy who stayed in the background while others took credit for what I built. Now I was the one people turned to. I finished my speech, and as the applause began to fade, I glanced over at Ryan one last time. His eyes locked with mine, but this time I didn't see the arrogant smirk or the dismissive glance. He was just frozen, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, not from watching him suffer, but from realizing that I had never needed his approval to succeed. I turned, thanked the crowd, and walked off the stage. I could feel Ryan's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. There was no need. I had already walked away from him once before. Now I was walking toward something much bigger, and this time there was no looking back. The days that followed felt like a dream. It wasn't that I was suddenly rich or famous, but something had shifted. It was as if the weight I had been carrying for so long had been lifted. Every email, every new business connection, every step I took from that moment felt lighter. It wasn't just the money or the success, it was the realization that I had done it on my own. And not just that, but I had done it better than before. Ryan had given me the push I needed, even though it was the most painful shove I could have imagined. I had spent years making excuses for his behavior, telling myself it was just part of the process. But now I realized that I had been holding on to a sinking ship. Ryan wasn't the one who believed in me. I was the one who believed in myself. And that's when it hit me. The lesson that I had been too blind to see before. I had spent all that time trying to prove myself to him, to the people around me, to the investors. But what I should have been doing all along was proving myself to me. I was enough. It's easy to get lost in the noise, in the idea that we need someone else to validate us. We look for approval in others, thinking that if they believe in us, we'll somehow become worthy of our dreams. But the truth is, the only approval that matters is your own. As I watched PathLink grow, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The system I had built was now helping thousands of companies, real companies that were thriving, not just in logistics, but in every sector we'd initially targeted. I had come full circle, but this time I was in control. I reached out to my parents. I remember telling my mom about the funding, about the success. She cried, and I had to fight back my own tears. She had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. My father, who had never understood what I did with all those late nights on my computer, finally saw what it meant, not just to me, but to everyone I'd touched along the way. I spoke to Michelle too, of course. She had become more than just an investor. She had become a mentor, and that wasn't something I took lightly. She had seen something in me that I hadn't even seen in myself. And Ryan? Well, I never heard from him again, and honestly, I didn't want to. There were no hard feelings. I didn't feel the need to confront him or make him apologize. His actions spoke for themselves, and I had already moved on. The lesson was simple, though. Sometimes people will cut you out, not because you don't deserve a seat at the table, but because they're too focused on themselves to see your worth. But when that happens, don't fight to stay at the table. Build your own table. I think back to the day Ryan told me, "You're just the coder," and I laugh now. Not because it's funny, but because I see how far I've come. That was the moment I realized I had everything I needed to succeed. I just had to stop waiting for someone to let me in. I had to let myself in. And now I'm sitting at the table I built. Not just a coder anymore, not just a developer, a founder.